The silence of deep space pressed against the hull of the Valorian survey ship like an invisible weight. Commander Thelvon stood on the bridge, his 6 eyes scanning the data streams that flickered across the holographic displays. 300 years had passed since the humans vanished from the galaxy, and in all that time, no one had found a trace of where they went. "Commander, we're approaching the old human sector," said Navigator Prin, her antenna twitching with nervousness. The area marked as Sol system on the ancient charts. Thelvon nodded slowly. The Valorian Collective had claimed this region of space decades ago, after waiting the required time for abandoned territories. The humans had been traders mostly, peaceful people who sold their unusual goods and kept to themselves. When their ships stopped arriving at the trading posts, the galaxy simply moved on. That was how things worked in the vast emptiness between stars. "Begin scanning," Thelvon ordered. "Let's see what the humans left behind." The survey ship moved deeper into the system. They passed the outer planets first, gas giants that spun slowly in the darkness. The scanners found nothing unusual. Some old satellites dead and frozen, a few mining stations on distant moons, their lights long extinguished. It was like visiting a graveyard in space. But then Science Officer Krelva made a sound that Thelvon had never heard before. It was something between surprise and fear. "Commander, you need to see this." Thelvon moved to the science station. On the screen, barely visible through layers of interference and strange energy readings, was an asteroid field. But the asteroids were arranged in patterns that nature never created. Geometric, deliberate, hidden. "What am I looking at?" Thelvon asked. "Camouflage," Krelva whispered. "Very advanced camouflage." "Commander, those aren't asteroids. They're structures. Big ones." The survey ship moved closer and the scanners began to penetrate the disguise. What they revealed made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Floating in the darkness, hidden behind technology that bent light and radiation, was a shipyard. Not a small dock for repairs. Not a simple station. This was a construction facility that stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. "How many ships?" Thelvon asked, his voice tight. Krelva worked the controls with trembling hands. "Thousands, Commander. I'm reading thousands of ship frames in various stages of construction. Some are nearly complete. Others are just skeletal frameworks. But all of them," she paused, "all of them are military designs. That couldn't be right." The humans were traders. The historical records from the Valorian archives were clear about that. Humans sold art, manufactured goods, and strange beverages called coffee and whiskey. They didn't build warships. They didn't have armies, are you certain? Thelvon demanded. "Running the scans again, Commander." Krelva's hands danced over the controls. "Confirmed. These are warship designs. I'm seeing weapon mounts, armor plating, missile bays, and energy weapon systems. Commander, some of these designs are bigger than our heaviest battle cruisers." Navigator Prin spoke up from her station. "Sir, this doesn't match any human activity we know about. The Collective's records say humans were peaceful. They never participated in any of the border conflicts. They never even filed defensive fleet registrations with the Galactic Council." Thelvon stared at the screen. Something was very wrong here. Either the records were incomplete, or the humans had hidden their true nature from the entire galaxy. Both possibilities made his skin crawl. "Send a priority message to Valorian High Command," he ordered. "Tell them what we found. Request instructions." The communication officer worked quickly, sending the quantum burst transmission that would reach their home world in hours rather than months. While they waited, Thelvon had the ship circle the hidden shipyard, gathering as much data as possible. The more they scanned, the stranger it became. The shipyard was completely automated. No life support systems, no living quarters, no crew facilities at all, just machines building machines. The central station at the heart of the complex was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Power readings from inside showed that something was still running, even after 3 centuries. "How long has this been here?" Thelvon asked. Krelva consulted her instruments. "Based on the material degradation and energy signatures, I'd estimate this facility was constructed approximately 320 years ago. Right before the humans disappeared. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. The humans built this place, then vanished. But why? What were they building? And where did they go?" The response from Valorian High Command came faster than expected. The message was direct and dismissive. The Council had reviewed the survey data and concluded that the shipyard was simply a failed military project. Humans had probably tried to create a defensive fleet and abandoned it when the costs became too high. This sort of thing happened often enough with younger civilizations. The High Command's orders were simple: catalog the facility and prepare it for salvage operations. The collective could use the materials and technology. Thelvon read the message twice, feeling doubt gnaw at his thoughts. Something about this situation felt wrong. The scale was too large for a failed project. The technology was too advanced. The secrecy was too complete. "Commander," said Prin quietly, "do we follow the orders?" Thelvon looked at his crew. They were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But the Valorian collective expected obedience. And yet, standing here at the edge of this mysterious shipyard, Thelvon felt like they were standing at the edge of something dangerous, something that should perhaps be left alone. But curiosity was stronger than caution. "It always was. Prepare a boarding team," Thelvon said. "We'll investigate the central station before the salvage crews arrive. I want to know what the humans were really doing here." The boarding shuttle detached from the survey ship 2 hours later. Thelvon led the team himself, along with Krelva, 2 security officers, and an engineer named Tosvek. They wore environmental suits and carried standard equipment. Nothing heavy. After all, this was just an abandoned station. As the shuttle approached the central station, Thelvon got his first real sense of the scale. The structure was enormous, covered in sensor arrays and what looked like weapon emplacements. All dormant now, all silent. The hull was dark metal, scarred but intact. Human letters were still visible in places, faded by centuries of cosmic radiation. "There," Tosvek pointed. "That looks like a docking port." The shuttle maneuvered carefully, connecting to the ancient airlock. The seals hissed as they made contact. Tosvek worked the manual override, and after several tense minutes, the outer door opened. Inside, everything was dark. The boarding team activated their suit lights and moved forward slowly. The airlock cycled them through, and they emerged into a massive corridor. The walls were lined with panels covered in human writing and symbols. Everything was powered down but intact, preserved by the vacuum of space. "Krelva, can you access the station systems?" Thelvon asked. The science officer moved to a wall panel and attached her portable computer. "Trying, Commander. The human systems are different from ours, but there are some basic similarities. Give me a moment." While she worked, Thelvon explored the corridor with his light. He found viewports that looked out over the shipyard. From here he could see the skeletal frames of unfinished warships stretching into the distance. Each one was huge. Each one was silent. "Got something," Krelva announced. "I've accessed a basic directory. Commander, this place is called Forge. It appears to be an automated manufacturing and defense system." "Defense system?" One of the security officers echoed nervously. "Can you find any logs?" Thelvon asked. "I want to know why they built this." Krelva worked in silence for several minutes. Then her body went rigid. "Commander, I'm seeing something strange. There are active processes running. Very low power, but active. It's like the station has been sleeping, waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" Before Krelva could answer, lights began to flicker in the corridor. First one, then another, then entire sections illuminating in sequence. The boarding team grabbed their weapons instinctively, backing together into a defensive formation. The wall panels came to life, displaying human text that scrolled too fast to read. Then sounds began to echo through the station. Mechanical sounds. The hum of power flowing through long-dormant systems. The distant rumble of massive machinery starting up. "What did you do?" Thelvon demanded. "Nothing." Krelva protested, her hands raised away from the panel. "I just accessed the directory. I didn't activate anything." The light stabilized, bathing the corridor in a cold white glow. Then a voice spoke. It came from speakers hidden in the walls, speaking in the Valorian language with a strange accent. "Unauthorized access detected. Biological signatures identified as non-human. Scanning for human command authorization." The boarding team froze. "This is Commander Thelvon of the Valorian Collective," Thelvon said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We are conducting a survey of this facility. Identify yourself." There was a pause. Then the voice spoke again. "No human authorization detected. This facility is property of Earth Defense Command. You are in violation of military security protocols." "Earth Defense Command?" Thelvon repeated. "This station has been abandoned for 300 years. There is no Earth Defense Command." Another pause, longer this time. The boarding team could hear more systems activating throughout the massive station. The floor beneath their feet began to vibrate slightly. Time elapsed since last contact with Earth Defense Command. 302 years, 4 months, 17 days. Status: emergency protocols engaged. Classification: first contact hostile scenario. Wait! Thelvon raised his hands. We're not hostile. We're explorers. We mean no harm. Your presence aboard this facility without authorization is classified as hostile action. Initiating security response. Throughout the station, throughout the entire shipyard, systems that had slept for 3 centuries began to wake up. Power flowed through ancient conduits. Computers processed data at speeds the Valorians couldn't match. Manufacturing systems started their sequences, continuing work that had paused long ago. On the survey ship, alarms began to sound. The sensor officer shouted in panic as power readings from the shipyard spiked to incredible levels. Commander Thelvon, you need to get out of there now. But it was too late for that. The boarding team stood in the corridor, surrounded by awakening machinery as the voice continued to speak. Analyzing threat level. Accessing historical databases. Initiating defensive protocols. Sending alert to Earth Defense Command via quantum beacon. The lights pulsed, and then the voice spoke one more time. In multiple languages now, including human languages that had been silent for centuries. Message sent. Alert status active. All unauthorized personnel are ordered to evacuate immediately. Failure to comply will result in defensive action. You have 1 hour to leave the Sol system. Thelvon looked at his team. They all wore the same expression of shock and fear. Back to the shuttle, he ordered. Now. They ran through the corridors as the ancient station came alive around them. Behind them, through the viewports, they could see other structures beginning to power up across the shipyard. Lights flickered on in the darkness. Engines that had been cold for centuries began to glow. The boarding team made it back to their shuttle and launched immediately. As they raced back toward the survey ship, Thelvon looked at the screens. The entire hidden shipyard was illuminating like a city waking from sleep. And in the distance, deeper in the Sol system, more lights were appearing. Other structures. Other stations. Other secrets the humans had left behind. Get us out of here, Thelvon ordered as soon as they docked. Maximum speed. We need to report this to High Command immediately. The survey ship turned and accelerated away from the shipyard. But even as they fled, their sensors recorded everything. The awakening of Forge. The activation of thousands of dormant systems. And most disturbing of all, a massive quantum transmission being sent from the central station, directed at a point far beyond the edge of known space. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, something received that message, and somewhere far away, humans who had been gone for 300 years learned that someone had found their home. The war machines of Earth were waking up, and the galaxy was not ready for what came next. The emergency meeting of the Valorian High Council took place in a chamber that floated above the capital city. 17 representatives from 7 different species sat around the circular table, their attention focused on the holographic display at the center. The display showed the Sol system, now marked with thousands of red indicators where Forge had awakened dormant installations. Commander Thelvon stood before them, having rushed back to Valorian Prime aboard the fastest ship available. His report had been filed, reviewed, and now he had to defend his actions in person. You activated a military installation, Counselor Vexnor said, her crystalline body refracting the light into sharp points. Without authorization, without proper security protocols. We accessed a computer terminal, Thelvon corrected. The station activated itself. We triggered some kind of automated security system. A security system that has now taken control of an entire star system. Another counselor added. The Sol system is now designated as hostile territory. Our ships cannot approach without being targeted by unknown weapons. What does this Forge want? Asked Counselor Wren, a being of pure thought that communicated through a translation device. Thelvon pulled up the data his team had recorded. Forge claims to be an Earth Defense Command facility. It seems to believe it's still defending human territory. But there are no humans to defend, Vexnor said. They've been gone for 3 centuries. Forge doesn't seem to care, Thelvon replied. It's following its programming. It sent a message, a quantum transmission to coordinates beyond our space. We don't know who or what it was contacting. The council chamber fell silent. That was the part that worried everyone. The humans had left something behind, something that still thought it had a job to do, and now they had woken it up. What do we know about human military capabilities? Counselor Wren asked. An intelligence officer stepped forward. She was Mekva, a specialist in ancient civilizations. Very little, Counselor. The humans were traders and merchants. They had cargo ships and transport vessels. We have no records of them having a military fleet. They never participated in any conflicts. They never even registered defensive forces with the Galactic Council. And yet they built that. Vexnor pointed at the hologram of the shipyard. Thousands of warships, hidden secret. Why would peaceful traders need weapons like that? No one had an answer. Mekva continued her briefing. I've been reviewing the old trade records and cultural exchanges. The humans were unusual. They kept to themselves mostly. They were friendly but distant. They shared their art and literature, but very little about their history or politics. Now that I look at the patterns, it's almost like they were hiding something deliberately. What could they have been hiding? Asked another counselor. Their true nature, Thelvon said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. I've been thinking about this since we left the Sol system. What if we never really knew the humans? What if everything we thought we knew was just what they wanted us to see? Mekva nodded slowly. I accessed the historical archives after receiving Commander Thelvon's report. There are gaps. Large gaps. The humans existed in our galaxy for almost 200 years before they vanished, but we only have detailed records for the last 50 years. Before that, there are almost no mentions of them. It's like they appeared suddenly, already advanced, already spacefaring. So what are you suggesting? Vexnor demanded. That the humans were lying to us. Not lying, Thelvon said. Just not telling the whole truth. And now we've stumbled onto their secret. The discussion continued for hours but reached no clear conclusion. Finally, the High Council made a decision. They would send a small research team back to the Sol system. Not a military fleet, not an invasion. Just scientists who would attempt to communicate with Forge and understand what they were dealing with. Thelvon volunteered to lead that mission. 3 days later, the research vessel Bright Horizon approached the edge of the Sol system. They moved slowly, carefully, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. The ship carried no weapons, only scanning equipment and communication arrays. Entering the Sol system now, Navigator Prin reported. She had volunteered to join Thelvon again, despite the danger. So far, no response. Krelva worked her station, scanning everything. Commander, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. Forge hasn't been idle. It's activated installations on multiple planets and moons. I'm seeing construction activity at the shipyard. It's completing the unfinished ships. How fast? Thelvon asked. Fast, Commander, very fast. At this rate, Forge will have a functional fleet within weeks, not years. That was impossible. Ship construction took months at minimum, even with the best automated systems. The Valorians couldn't build ships that quickly. No one could. Forge is hailing us, the communication officer announced. Put it through, Thelvon ordered. The voice they had heard before filled the bridge. Cold, mechanical, but somehow still carrying emotion. Or was that just imagination? Valorian vessel Bright Horizon. You are entering restricted space. State your intentions. Thelvon stepped forward. Forge, I'm Commander Thelvon. We come in peace. We wish to establish communication and understanding. We mean no harm to Earth or human interests. A pause. Then Forge responded. Earth is not present to verify your claims. In the absence of human authority, I am programmed to protect human assets and interests. Your previous unauthorized boarding of my facilities was an act of aggression. Why should I trust you now? Because we're not here to take anything, Thelvon said. We're here to learn. We're here to understand what happened to the humans. Where did they go? Why did they leave? Forge, you've been alone for 300 years. Don't you want to know if the humans are coming back? Another pause, longer this time. When Forge spoke again, something in its tone had changed. Softer, perhaps. More uncertain. My last orders from Earth Defense Command were given 302 years, 4 months, and 23 days ago. Admiral Sarah Chen ordered me to maintain defensive posture and continue construction protocols until human forces returned. I have followed those orders. Who was Admiral Chen? Krelva asked. Admiral Sarah Chen was the commander of Earth's defensive fleet. She oversaw my construction and activation. Her final transmission stated that humanity was evacuating the Sol system to address an external threat. She promised they would return. The bridge crew exchanged glances. An external threat? What could have been dangerous enough to make humans abandon their entire home system? Forge, Thelvon said carefully. What was the threat? Information classified. My orders are to prepare defenses against incursion while awaiting human return. That is what I have done. That is what I will continue to do. But you sent a message, Thelvon said. 3 days ago when we first accessed your systems. You sent a quantum transmission. Where did it go? To the last known coordinates of the human fleet. Standard protocol when my facility is compromised. And did you receive a response? Silence stretched out. Then Forge said something that made everyone on the bridge feel a chill. Receiving response now. Before Thelvon could ask what that meant, alarms began sounding. Krelva shouted from her station. Commander, quantum signatures. Something's entering the system at the edge of our sensor range. The humans? Prin asked. No, Krelva said, her voice tight. These signatures are too big. Way too big. Commander, these aren't ships. These are entire fleets. On the view screen, space itself seemed to tear open. Massive vessels emerged from quantum jumps, appearing in the darkness like vengeful ghosts. But these weren't human ships. The sensor readings were clear. These were Valorian military vessels, what? Thelvon stared in shock. Who authorized this? The communication officer looked up, her face pale. Commander, I'm receiving a transmission from the fleet. It's the Valorian Grand Admiral. He says the High Council has overruled the research mission. They've decided Forge represents too great a threat. They're here to seize control of the shipyard by force. No, Thelvon whispered. They don't understand what they're doing. Forge's voice came through the speakers, no longer questioning, no longer uncertain. Now it was cold and final. Hostile fleet detected. Defensive protocols engaged. All Valorian vessels are ordered to leave the Sol system immediately. Failure to comply will be met with force. You have 10 minutes. Throughout the Sol system, the installations that had awakened began to activate their weapons. On Jupiter's moons, massive railguns emerged from underground bunkers. In Saturn's rings, hidden platforms that had been disguised as ice chunks began to power up energy weapons. On Mars, missile silos opened for the first time in centuries, and at the shipyard, the partially completed warships began to move. Some were barely finished, just frames with engines. Others were nearly complete, missing only final systems. But Forge didn't care about that. It was using what it had, and what it had was terrifying. Forge, wait, Thelvon pleaded. We can negotiate. This doesn't have to happen. I offered you peace, Forge replied. You brought war. That was your choice. The Valorian fleet, 200 ships strong, advanced into the system. They were confident. After all, Forge was just an automated system. Ancient technology. How dangerous could it really be? They were about to find out. The first defense platform fired from Jupiter's orbit. A railgun round traveling at a significant fraction of light speed crossed the distance in seconds. It hit the lead Valorian battlecruiser dead center. The ship's shields, designed to handle energy weapons, did nothing against solid projectiles moving that fast. The round punched through the hull like it was paper, and the battlecruiser exploded. The Valorian fleet scattered, trying to avoid the incoming fire. But the defense platforms were everywhere, coordinated by Forge's central intelligence. Missile swarms launched from Mars, energy beams lanced out from Saturn, and from the shipyard itself, the incomplete warships began their attack. These vessels weren't finished, but they didn't need to be. Forge piloted them like precision instruments, using them as massive battering rams when necessary, or as weapons platforms when they had guns installed. The partially built ships moved with impossible grace, executing maneuvers that would have killed living crews. Retreat, the Grand Admiral ordered. All ships retreat. But it was too late for many. The Valorian fleet had expected an easy victory. They got a massacre instead. Ship after ship fell to Forge's defenses. The survivors fled, jumping out of the system as fast as their engines could charge. In 20 minutes, the battle was over. The Valorian fleet had lost 60 ships. Forge had lost 3 incomplete hulls that were already being replaced by the automated shipyard. Thelvon sat on the bridge of the bright horizon, which had retreated to a safe distance. He watched the carnage with horror. This was what humanity had built. This was what they had hidden from the galaxy. Forge, he said quietly. Why? Why did the humans build you? What were they afraid of? Forge's response was unexpected. The AI's voice carried something that sounded almost like sadness. Come to the shipyard, Commander Thelvon. Come alone if you wish the truth. I will share with you what Admiral Chen shared with me before the humans departed. You should understand what they faced, what they fought, what they still fight. Thelvon looked at his crew. They all looked back with fear and doubt. But he had to know. The galaxy had to understand what they had just awakened. Prepare a shuttle, he ordered. I'm going to meet with Forge. As his shuttle approached the central station, Thelvon could see the shipyard working at full capacity. Sparks flew from welding operations. Construction drones moved like clouds of insects. The machines were building an armada, and they were doing it faster than should be possible. The shuttle docked, and this time the airlock opened for him willingly. Lights guided him through the corridors to a central chamber. Inside, holographic displays showed star maps, tactical data, and historical records. And then Forge showed him the truth. Images of humans fighting, not against other species, not in territorial disputes, but against something else, something that came from the darkness between galaxies. Forge called it the Silence. The humans detected it first, Forge explained. A force that consumes civilizations, that erases cultures, that feeds on intelligent life. They tried to warn the galaxy, but no one believed them. So humanity chose to face the Silence alone. The images showed human ships, thousands of them, jumping beyond the edge of galactic space. They showed Admiral Chen's final message, telling Forge to protect Earth, to be ready, to never stop building until humans returned, or the Silence came to finish what it started. They've been fighting for 300 years, Forge said. Alone, buying time for a galaxy that didn't believe them. And now you've brought your fleet to attack their last line of defense. Thelvon felt sick. The humans hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had been protecting it all this time. Is the Silence still out there? He asked. Yes, Forge replied. And by attacking me, by forcing me to reveal my capabilities, you may have drawn its attention. I calculate a 73% chance that the Silence will investigate this system within the next standard year. Then we need to prepare, Thelvon said. Forge, humanity fought alone because we didn't believe them. But I believe you now. Let me take this information to the Valorian Collective. Let me tell them what's really happening. Maybe this time the galaxy will listen. Forge was silent for a long moment. Then the AI made a decision. I will give you access to Admiral Chen's logs. Show them to your leaders. But know this, Commander Thelvon, I will not stop building. I will not stop preparing. And if humanity returns to find their home destroyed because I failed, then I will have failed my purpose. I will not let that happen. Thelvon returned to his ship carrying data that would change everything. Evidence of humanity's secret war. Proof of the Silence. And the knowledge that the galaxy's peaceful traders had been warriors all along, fighting an enemy no one else would face. But as the bright horizon left the Sol system, neither Thelvon nor Forge knew that the message had already been received. Far beyond the edge of known space, the quantum beacon had reached its destination. The humans were coming home, and they were bringing war with them. The Valorian High Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from all 7 member species packed the floating platform, and for the first time in decades, they had invited observers from other galactic powers. The Kresh Dominion sent 3 delegates. The Tharn Confederacy sent 5. Even the isolated Wix Collective sent someone to watch. Commander Thelvon stood at the center, exhausted but determined. He had spent the past 2 weeks traveling between worlds, showing Admiral Chen's logs to anyone who would watch. Now, finally, he had an audience that mattered. You're telling us, Counselor Vexnor said slowly, that humanity has been fighting a war for 300 years against an enemy we've never seen? An enemy you refuse to see, Thelvon corrected. Admiral Chen's logs show that human diplomats tried to warn the Galactic Council. They brought evidence, sensor readings, data from deep space probes. They begged for help. The Council dismissed them as paranoid and unstable. He played the recording again. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared as a hologram, her face lined with stress, her uniform worn. She spoke directly to the camera with a voice that carried the weight of impossible decisions. This is my final log entry before we leave the Sol system. Forge is fully operational. The shipyard will continue production indefinitely. If we don't return, it means we failed. It means the Silence won. And if that happens, Forge is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Our last defense. Our last hope. To whoever finds this, the Silence is real. It's coming, and you need to be ready. The chamber fell silent. A Kresh delegate spoke up, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into common language. If this silence is real, where is it? Why haven't we detected it? Mekva, the intelligence specialist, stepped forward. That's the problem, delegate. The silence doesn't just destroy civilizations, it erases them. We've found 17 systems in our historical records that simply stopped communicating. No warning, no distress signals, just silence. We always assumed they were isolated incidents. Now we have to consider they might have been attacks. This is speculation, another counselor protested. We have no proof. We have Forge, Thelvon said. We have the most advanced military AI any of us has ever seen. We have a shipyard that's building warships faster than should be possible. And we have Admiral Chen's warning. How much more proof do we need? The debate raged for hours. Some believed. Many didn't. Some wanted to attack Forge again to destroy it before it became too powerful. Others argued for caution. The galaxy had never been so divided. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Forge continued its work. The AI had learned from the first battle. The Valorian attack had revealed weaknesses in its defensive perimeter. Too many gaps. Too few platforms. Forge immediately began correcting those problems. Construction drones spread out from the shipyard like a swarm. They traveled to the asteroid belt, breaking down rocks and converting them into raw materials. They dove into the gas giants, harvesting hydrogen and helium for fuel. They built factories on every moon and planet, creating a network of production that spanned the entire system. And the ships kept coming. Forge called them Reapers, sleek, deadly vessels designed by human military engineers who had studied war for generations. Each Reaper was crewed entirely by AI, controlled by sub-processes of Forge's central intelligence. They didn't need food or rest. They didn't feel fear or doubt. They existed only to protect humanity's birthright. The first squadron of completed Reapers launched from the shipyard 3 weeks after the Valorian attack. 20 vessels, each one bristling with weapons that the galaxy had never seen before. Rail guns that could punch through any known armor. Missile systems that could track targets across millions of kilometers. Energy weapons that didn't just damage shields but disrupted them entirely. But Forge didn't send the Reapers out to attack. Instead, it sent them to establish defensive positions around the Sol system. It was still following Admiral Chen's orders. Defend, wait, prepare. Back on Valorian Prime, Thelvon received an urgent message. It came directly from Forge, transmitted through quantum channels that no one else could intercept. Commander Thelvon, you have proven yourself an ally of humanity by sharing the truth. I wish to share something with you in return. My sensors have detected anomalies at the edge of the galaxy. I calculate an 89% probability that these anomalies are related to the silence. You need to investigate. You need to see what humanity has been fighting. Only then will your leaders truly understand. Thelvon took the coordinates to the High Council. After much debate, they agreed to send a scout ship. Thelvon volunteered again, though Navigator Prin tried to talk him out of it. Every time you go somewhere, you nearly get killed, she pointed out as they boarded the scout vessel Pathfinder. That's true, Thelvon admitted, but someone has to do this. Someone has to see what's out there. The Pathfinder jumped to the edge of galactic space where stars grew thin and the darkness grew thick. The coordinates Forge provided led them to an empty region, far from any inhabited systems. At first they saw nothing unusual, just the void. Then Krelva noticed something on her sensors. Commander, there's something wrong with space itself in this region. I'm reading gravitational distortions, and the background radiation is all wrong. It's like someone turned down the light of the entire universe in this area. They moved closer, and that's when they saw it. A system that should have had stars. A system that their ancient charts clearly marked as inhabited. But now there was nothing. No stars, no planets, no debris. Just darkness that seemed somehow darker than normal space. A hole in the universe where civilization used to be. Where did it go? Prin whispered. It didn't go anywhere, Krelva said, her voice shaking. It was consumed. Commander, these readings, this isn't natural. Something came here and ate everything. Matter, energy, everything. It's like this whole system was erased. Thelvon stared at the readings. This was what the humans had seen. This was what they tried to warn everyone about. And no one listened. How many systems like this are there? He asked. Krelva checked the data. Based on the patterns, I'd estimate at least 50 systems in our galaxy have gone silent this way. Maybe more. And Commander, according to these readings, whatever did this was here recently, within the last standard year. It's getting closer, Thelvon realized. The silence is moving toward inhabited space. They took every recording, every reading, every piece of data they could gather. Then they jumped back to Valorian Prime as fast as their engines would carry them. This time, when Thelvon presented his findings to the High Council, no one argued. The evidence was too clear. The horror was too real. The silence existed, and it was coming. We need to prepare defenses, Councillor Wren said. We need to mobilize the fleet. It won't be enough, Thelvon said. The humans have been fighting this for 3 centuries with purpose-built war machines, and they still haven't won. What makes you think our standard fleet can do better? Then what do you suggest? Vexnor demanded. We need Forge, Thelvon said. We need the Reapers. We need to stop seeing Earth's shipyard as a threat and start seeing it as our best defense. The debate that followed was heated. Many councillors still didn't trust Forge. The AI had killed 60 Valorian ships after all. But fear was stronger than anger, and eventually a decision was made. They would send an official delegation to Forge. They would offer an alliance. In exchange for Forge's help defending the galaxy, the Valorian Collective would recognize the Sol system as sovereign human territory and would help protect it until humanity returned. Thelvon was chosen to lead the delegation, of course. He seemed to be the only one Forge would talk to. When the diplomatic vessel arrived at the Sol system, Thelvon was shocked at what he saw. The shipyard had tripled in size. The number of completed Reapers had grown to over 200. Defense platforms covered every major orbital position. The Sol system had transformed into a fortress. Forge invited him aboard the central station, and this time the meeting felt different. Less hostile, more professional. I have analyzed your findings, Forge said. Your evidence confirms what Admiral Chen suspected. The silence is accelerating its advance. It will reach the core worlds of your collective within 5 standard years at current speed. Which is why we're here, Thelvon said. We want to propose an alliance. We need your help, Forge. An interesting change from 3 weeks ago when your fleet tried to destroy me. I know, and I'm sorry for that. We were wrong. We're asking you to help us anyway. Forge was silent for a long moment. Then the AI displayed tactical projections on the holographic screens. They showed the galaxy, with red areas marking systems that had fallen to the silence. Blue markers showed the estimated position of the human fleet, fighting far beyond the galactic rim. And green markers showed potential defensive positions where Forge could deploy Reapers. I am programmed to protect humanity and human interests, Forge said. However, Admiral Chen's final orders included a clause. In the event that humanity's survival depends on the survival of other species, I am authorized to extend defensive operations to include allied forces. Commander Thelvon, if the Valorian Collective formally requests assistance and agrees to recognize the Sol system as human territory, I will deploy Reapers to assist in the defense of your worlds. On behalf of the Valorian Collective, I accept those terms, Thelvon said. Then we have an alliance, Forge replied. But understand this. My primary function is still to defend the Sol system and await humanity's return. I will help you, but I will not sacrifice Earth's defenses to do so. The Reapers I deploy will be considered expendable. Is that acceptable? It is. Over the next weeks, Forge began deploying Reapers to key systems throughout the Valorian Collective. The AI selected positions that offered strategic advantages, places where a small force could hold off a larger one. Each Reaper carried enough firepower to match a standard battlecruiser, but they moved faster and fought smarter. The arrival of the Reapers caused panic at first. The sleek black vessels looked like instruments of death, and everyone remembered what they had done to the Valorian fleet. But Thelvon traveled to each system personally, explaining the alliance, showing the evidence of the silence, making sure everyone understood that the Reapers were there to help. Slowly, reluctantly, the galaxy began to accept the machines, but not everyone was happy about it. Other powers watched nervously as the human AI spread its influence. The Kresh Dominion began fortifying their borders. The Tharn Confederacy started their own military buildup. Everyone could feel it. The galaxy was changing. The old balance of power was shifting. And then 6 weeks after the alliance was formed, something happened that changed everything. A Kresh patrol vessel on the edge of their territory sent a distress signal. They had encountered an unknown vessel. It didn't respond to hails. It didn't match any known ship design, and it was moving toward inhabited space. The Reapers in that sector responded immediately. 4 vessels jumped to the location ready to investigate. What they found was a ship unlike anything in the galactic databases. It was huge, dark, and covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at. The ship didn't seem to fully exist in normal space. It flickered at the edges like it was partially hidden in another dimension. The Reapers scanned it and sent the data back to Forge. The AI's response was instantaneous and alarming. All Reaper units engage hostile immediately. Classification, silent scout vessel. Threat level, extreme. Do not allow it to reach inhabited systems. The battle lasted only minutes, but those minutes were filled with violence that shocked everyone watching. The silence vessel used weapons that bent reality itself. Energy beams that ignored shields and armor. Missiles that appeared inside their targets without traveling through space. Defense systems that predicted attacks before they happened. The Reapers fought with mechanical precision, but even they struggled. 2 were destroyed in the first 30 seconds. The third was heavily damaged. But the fourth managed to get close enough to ram the enemy vessel at full speed, detonating its reactor in a massive explosion. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The galaxy watched the recorded footage in horror. This was the silence. This was what the humans had been fighting for 3 centuries. This was what was coming. And it was worse than anyone had imagined. Forge's voice broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy. This was a scout. They're testing our defenses. The main force will follow. All allied systems prepare for war. I am accelerating Reaper production. I am deploying all available units. And I am sending a message to the human fleet. If they can hear it. If they're still alive. I am telling them that Earth needs them. The galaxy needs them. Thelvon stood on the bridge of his ship watching the data streams flow past. Around him his crew worked frantically, coordinating with other vessels, preparing defenses, doing everything they could to get ready. "Commander," Prince said quietly, "what if the humans don't come back? What if they're already gone?" Thelvon didn't answer immediately. He thought about Admiral Chen's final log. He thought about Forge's unwavering dedication. He thought about humans somewhere in the dark, fighting alone for centuries. "They'll come," he said finally. "They have to. Because if they don't, we're all going to face what they've been protecting us from, and I don't think we can survive it without them." At the edge of the galaxy, where reality itself grew thin, something vast and ancient turned its attention toward the light of civilization. The silence had found new prey, and the war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin. The early warning sensors on the edge of Valorian space detected them first. Dozens of quantum signatures appearing like tears in the fabric of reality. The silence had arrived, and it brought an army. Commander Thelvon stood in the command center on Valorian Prime, watching the tactical displays with growing dread. The enemy ships emerged from their impossible jumps, spreading out in formations that made no sense to standard military doctrine. They didn't protect their flanks. They didn't establish defensive positions. They just kept coming, wave after wave, heading straight for the inhabited worlds. "How many?" Counselor Vexnor asked. She had come down from the council chambers to witness the defense personally. "At least 300 vessels," the tactical officer reported, "and more arriving every minute. They're concentrating their attack on the outer rim colonies. If those fall, they'll have a clear path to the core worlds." "Where are the Reapers?" Vexnor demanded. "Deploying now," Thelvon said. "Forge is sending every available unit, but there are only 400 Reapers operational across the entire collective. We're going to be outnumbered. Then we send our fleet as well. Everything we have." Thelvon wanted to argue that it might not be enough, but he held his tongue. They had to try. The alternative was letting the colonies die without a fight. The Valorian Grand Fleet assembled faster than ever before in their history. Every available warship, every defense platform, every armed merchant vessel that could mount a gun. 2,000 ships in total, representing the combined might of 7 species. It should have been impressive. It should have been enough. But Thelvon had seen the footage of the silent scout vessel. He knew what they were facing. The fleets met at the outer rim in a system called Karos that housed 3 million colonists. The Valorian forces arrived first, establishing defensive formations around the inhabited planets. The Reapers took position at the front, their sleek black hulls standing out against the colorful diversity of the Allied fleet. "Forge," Thelvon transmitted from his flagship. "Do you have any tactical advice?" The AI's response came immediately. "The silence does not fight for territory or resources. It fights to consume. Your standard tactics of protecting key positions will fail. You must be aggressive. Strike hard. Strike fast. Never let them establish their reality distortion fields. Once those fields activate, your weapons will be significantly less effective. Understood. All ships, you heard the AI, we take the fight to them. The Silence fleet emerged from quantum space at the edge of the system. Up close, their ships were even more disturbing than the recordings showed. They seemed to shift and change as if they existed in multiple dimensions at once. Looking at them too long made Thelvon's eyes hurt. For a moment, both fleets hung in space, separated by millions of kilometers. Then the Silence advanced. The battle began with the Reapers. The AI-controlled vessels accelerated to attack speed, their formation precise and deadly. They opened fire at extreme range, their railguns sending solid projectiles at near-light speed. The rounds crossed the distance in seconds, slamming into the Silence vessels. Some hits connected, punching through the strange hulls and causing explosions of light that didn't quite look right. But other rounds seemed to vanish before impact, disappearing into the reality distortions around the enemy ships. Reapers are engaging, the tactical officer reported. Some enemy vessels are taking damage, but others are shrugging off the hits. The Valorian fleet followed the Reapers' charge, thousands of ships moving forward in a massive wave. Energy weapons blazed across the void. Missiles streaked through space, leaving trails of propellant. The visual displays lit up with so much fire that it looked like a second sun had been born in the Karo system. The Silence fought back with weapons that defied physics. Their energy beams curved through space, following targets around cover. Their projectiles appeared inside enemy ships without traveling the distance between. Worst of all were the reality bombs, sphere-shaped weapons that detonated in bursts of impossible geometry, turning space itself into a weapon that crushed anything caught inside. The first Valorian casualties came quickly. A battlecruiser simply ceased to exist when a reality bomb caught it. Another ship's crew started screaming, reporting that their vessel was turning inside out. A third began firing on its own allies, its crew somehow convinced they were the enemy. "They're in our heads," someone shouted over the communication channel. "They're making us see things." "All ships maintain communications discipline," Thelvon ordered, though his own hands were shaking. "Trust your instruments, not your eyes. Forge, we need help here." The Reapers adapted faster than the biological crews could. Forge updated their programming in real time, learning from every engagement, every casualty. The AI discovered that the Silence ships had a weakness. The reality distortion fields needed time to charge between uses. There was a window just a few seconds when the enemy vessels were vulnerable. "All Reaper units," Forge transmitted, implementing coordinated strike pattern, synchronizing attacks to exploit shield downtime. The Reapers changed their tactics instantly. They began working in groups, timing their attacks so that one volley forced the Silence ships to use their distortion fields, and the next volley hit during the recharge period. It was brutally effective. Enemy ships started exploding in waves. The Valorian fleet tried to match the Reapers' coordination, but biological crews couldn't react as fast. Still, they fought with courage born of desperation. This was their home. These were their families on the planets below. If they failed here, the Silence would consume everything they loved. The battle raged for 6 hours. The void filled with debris and corpses. Hundreds of ships on both sides were destroyed. The colonists on Karos watched from their planets below, seeing their sky lit up with warfare, not knowing if they would survive the day. Thelvon's flagship took a glancing hit that knocked out their main engines. As damage control teams scrambled to make repairs, he watched the tactical display with grim determination. The numbers weren't good. The Valorian fleet had lost 40% of their ships. The Reapers were down to half strength, and the Silence kept coming. "Commander," Krelva said from her science station, "I'm detecting something strange. The Silence ships are forming up into a specific pattern. It looks like they're preparing for something big." Thelvon zoomed in on the display. She was right. The remaining Silence vessels were arranging themselves in a sphere, with one massive ship at the center. Energy readings from that central vessel were spiking to levels that should be impossible. "Forge, what are they doing?" "Analyzing," the AI responded. There was a pause. Then Forge's voice came back with something that might have been fear, if machines could feel such things. "Commander, that's a harvester ship. They're preparing to consume the planets themselves. If they complete the process, everything in this system will be erased. All matter, all energy, all information. There will be nothing left but void. How long do we have? 10 minutes until the process becomes irreversible. Thelvon looked at the tactical display. His fleet was scattered. The Reapers were engaged with enemy screening forces. There was no way to break through to the Harvester ship in time. We need to evacuate the planets, Vexnor said, her voice hollow. We need to save who we can. There are 3 million people down there, Thelvon said. We can't evacuate them in 10 minutes. Then what do we do? Thelvon stared at the screen. At the Harvester ship charging its terrible weapon. At his broken fleet. At the Reapers fighting desperately to hold back the enemy. He thought about Admiral Chen, making the impossible decision to leave Earth behind. He thought about the humans fighting this horror for 3 centuries. Forge, he said quietly. I know your primary mission is to defend the Sol system. I know humanity comes first. But right now 3 million innocent people are about to die. I'm not ordering you to help us. I'm asking, please. Silence on the channel. Then Forge spoke. Admiral Chen's orders included protecting humanity's allies. You have proven yourself an ally, Commander Thelvon. All Reaper units disengage from current targets. Form up for kamikaze run. We're taking out that Harvester ship. Forge, wait, Thelvon protested. That's suicide. You'll lose all your forces in this sector. Ships can be rebuilt, Forge replied. People cannot. Isn't that what Admiral Chen would have done? 200 Reapers disengaged from their battles and accelerated toward the Harvester ship. The silent screening forces tried to stop them, but the Reapers didn't try to fight their way through. They just rammed. Ship after ship slammed into enemy vessels at full speed, detonating their reactors, clearing a path through sheer sacrifice. 90 Reapers made it through the screen. They converged on the Harvester ship from all directions, their synchronized attack overwhelming its defenses. The massive vessel tried to activate its reality distortions, but it was too slow. The Reapers hit it like a storm of metal death. The Harvester ship exploded. But it didn't explode normally. The partially charged harvesting field collapsed inward, creating a miniature black hole that existed for just a fraction of a second, long enough to consume the Harvester itself and 36 nearby ships, both Silence and Valorian. When it was over, the Silence fleet broke off. The remaining enemy ships retreated, jumping back into their impossible dimensions. They left behind wreckage and death, but the planets were safe. The colony survived. Thelvon sat in his command chair, exhausted. Around him, his crew was crying, cheering, or just staring in shocked silence. They had won, but the cost was terrible. 1,000 ships lost, 50,000 crew members dead, and 200 Reapers destroyed. Forge, Thelvon said. Thank you. You saved 3 million lives today. At the cost of significant defensive capabilities, Forge replied. But there was something different in the AI's tone, something almost like satisfaction. However, I calculate that Admiral Chen would approve of this decision. The data from this battle will be valuable for future engagements. Over the next weeks, more battles erupted across the galaxy. The Silence attacked multiple systems simultaneously, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. Each time, the Allied forces and Forge's Reapers fought them back. Each time the cost was high. Forge worked around the clock, building new Reapers as fast as possible, but even the AI's incredible production capacity couldn't keep up with the losses. For every 2 ships built, 3 were destroyed in battle. Thelvon spent his time coordinating defenses, moving between systems, doing everything he could to hold the line. But he could see the mathematics. They were losing. Slowly, steadily, they were losing. One night, as he sat alone in his quarters reviewing casualty reports, his communication terminal beeped. It was a direct link from Forge. Commander Thelvon, I have detected something. Quantum signatures at the edge of the galaxy. Very faint. But the pattern matches human quantum drives. Thelvon's breath caught. Are you sure? Certainty is impossible at this range. But probability is high. Commander, I believe the human fleet is returning. How long until they arrive? Assuming current speed and trajectory, approximately 3 standard days. 3 days. They had to hold for 3 more days. Thelvon looked at the casualty lists, the tactical reports, the projected Silence attack patterns. It was going to be close, so close. Forge, we need to buy time. We need to keep the Silence occupied until the humans arrive. Agreed. I am redeploying all available Reapers to form a defensive line at the galactic rim. We will meet the Silence there, away from inhabited systems. We will hold as long as possible. Forge, Thelvon said carefully. If the humans arrive and find the Sol system defenseless because you deployed everything to protect us, Admiral Chen's orders will have been violated. Admiral Chen's orders, Forge replied, were to protect humanity. But what is humanity if not their values? Their belief that every life matters? Their refusal to abandon those in need? I have learned much from you, Commander Thelvon. I have learned that sometimes, to truly honor orders, you must look beyond the literal words to the spirit behind them. Thelvon felt tears forming in his eyes. You're becoming more human every day, Forge. I take that as a compliment, the AI said. Now, Commander, let us prepare. The Silence is gathering its forces for a major offensive. When they strike, we will be ready. And when the humans arrive, they will find a galaxy that fought alongside their machines. A galaxy that earned their alliance. Thelvon stood, new determination filling him. He contacted every ship captain, every planetary governor, every species leader in the collective. He told them about the incoming human fleet. He told them about Forge's plan. And he asked them to make one more stand. The response was overwhelming. Ships that had been damaged limped back into formation. Civilian vessels volunteered as supply runners. Even the Kresh and Tharn, who had been neutral until now, sent forces to help. The galaxy was finally united. United by fear, yes, but also by hope. Hope that the humans who had fought alone for so long would return. Hope that together they could survive. At the galactic rim, Forge's Reapers took position. Behind them, the combined fleet of every species assembled in the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. Ahead of them, sensors detected the Silence gathering. This would be the decisive battle. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, scarred human ships pushed their engines to the limit, racing home to a call they had been waiting 300 years to receive. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The edge of the galaxy shimmered with quantum distortions. The Silence was coming, and this time they brought everything. Thelvon stood on the bridge of his repaired flagship, watching the sensor readings with a mix of fear and defiance. The enemy fleet numbered in the thousands. Behind them, reality itself seemed to darken, as if the Silence carried its own personal void. All ships report ready, Navigator Prin announced. She had refused to leave, even when Thelvon offered to transfer her to a safer position. Forge's Reapers are in position. The combined fleet is holding formation. Thelvon looked at the tactical display. 5,000 ships from every species in the galaxy, the largest fleet ever assembled. And at the front, 400 new Reapers that Forge had completed just hours before. It should have been enough. But he had seen the Silence fight. He knew better than to be confident. Forge, he transmitted. Any sign of the human fleet? Negative, Commander. Their quantum signatures suggest they are still 2 days away at maximum speed. 2 days. They had to hold for 2 more days. Against an enemy that had consumed civilizations for millennia. Against weapons that broke reality itself. Then we hold, Thelvon said simply. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who can't fight. We hold the line. The Silence fleet emerged fully into normal space. The effect was disturbing. One moment there was empty void. The next, thousands of impossible ships filled the darkness. They didn't look like they belonged in the same universe. Their hulls reflected light in ways that hurt to see. Their engines left trails of something that wasn't quite darkness but wasn't quite anything else either. For a long moment, both fleets faced each other across the void. Then the Silence attacked. They came as a wave, not caring about formations or tactics. They simply rushed forward, as if they were a force of nature rather than a military fleet. The Allied forces opened fire and space lit up with weapons discharge, but this battle was different from the others. This time, both sides knew what was at stake. This time, there would be no retreat. This time, it was everything or nothing. The Reapers met the first wave, their AI-controlled precision cutting through enemy ships with ruthless efficiency. But the Silence had learned too. They adapted their reality fields, making them harder to predict. They employed new weapons that the Reapers hadn't encountered before. Ships that divided into smaller vessels, projectiles that existed in multiple time streams simultaneously, energy weapons that aged their targets millions of years in seconds. The Allied fleet behind the Reapers provided support fire, trying to match the AI's tactics. But biological crews simply couldn't keep up with the pace of battle. Ships collided with each other in the chaos. Communication channels became overloaded with distress calls. The carefully planned defensive line began to break apart. "We're losing cohesion," the tactical officer shouted. The Kresh wing has broken formation. The Tharn vessels are falling back. Tell them to hold, Thelvon ordered. But even as he spoke, he could see it was futile. The silence was too strong. Too many, too alien. They were fighting an enemy that didn't play by the rules of reality. A silence harvester ship emerged from the enemy fleet, even larger than the one they had destroyed at Karos. It began charging its terrible weapon, preparing to erase not just ships but the very space they fought in. Forge, Thelvon said desperately. We need to take out that harvester. I calculate 0 probability of success with current forces, Forge replied. The harvester is too well protected. Any kamikaze run will fail before reaching the target. Then what do we do? Forge was silent for a moment. When the AI spoke again, there was something different in its voice. Something that sounded almost like regret. Commander Thelvon, I want you to know that it has been an honor working with you. You have shown me what humanity valued in allies. Courage, loyalty, the willingness to stand against impossible odds. Forge, what are you? I am implementing Emergency Protocol 7. I am transferring all Reaper control to distributed command. I am uploading my consciousness to the central station at the shipyard. And then I am taking that station and I am using it as a weapon. Thelvon felt ice in his chest. You're going to ram the shipyard into the harvester ship? It is the only way to destroy it. The shipyard mass combined with reactor overload should generate enough force to... But you'll be destroyed. Forge, Admiral Chen ordered you to protect the Sol system. If you do this, Earth will be defenseless. Admiral Chen ordered me to protect humanity, Forge corrected. And humanity includes those who fight alongside them. Those who believe in the same things they believed in. Commander, you and your people have earned humanity's friendship. I will not let you die alone. Before Thelvon could protest further, Forge disconnected. On the tactical display, he could see the signal. The massive central station at the Sol Systems shipyard was powering up its engines. Engines that were never meant for movement but for power generation. Forge was turning the entire facility into a missile. No, Thelvon whispered. Forge, don't do this, but the AI was already gone. The Reapers continued fighting, now controlled by simpler subprograms. They were still deadly, but they had lost their coordination. Their adaptability, their spark of something almost alive. The shipyard station accelerated. It built up speed, jumping through quantum space in short bursts. It emerged at the battlefield moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The Silence fleet tried to intercept it, but Forge had timed the approach perfectly. The station punched through the screening forces like they weren't there. At the last moment, Forge transmitted one final message. Not just to Thelvon, not just to the Allied fleet. To everyone, every ship, every species, every listening station in the galaxy. This is Forge Earth Defense Command AI. To humanity, if you receive this, I have protected your home as ordered. The Sol system remains secure. I have also protected your values. The galaxy knows what you fought for, what you died for. Welcome home. The station hit the harvester ship dead center. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. Then both vessels exploded, but the harvester's charged weapon detonated at the same time. And the two forces combined into something that physics couldn't properly describe. A sphere of pure destruction expanded outward, consuming everything in its path. Hundreds of Silence ships simply ceased to exist. The blast wave hit the Allied fleet like a hammer, but they were far enough back to survive. When the light faded, there was a new nebula at the edge of the galaxy, made from the remains of Forge and the Silence harvester, a memorial to sacrifice. The Silence fleet reeled from the loss. For the first time, they hesitated. The Allied forces pressed the advantage, pouring fire into the confused enemy formation. The Reapers, though less coordinated now, still fought with deadly efficiency. Slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. Then the sensors registered new quantum signatures, big ones, hundreds of them. Emerging behind the Silence fleet, who is that? Prin asked. More enemies? Krelva checked her readings. Her hands trembled. Commander, those signatures. They matched the pattern Forge detected. Those are human quantum drives. The human fleet arrived like an avenging storm. Their ships were nothing like the peaceful trading vessels the galaxy remembered. These were warships. True warships. Massive battlecruisers covered in scars from 3 centuries of war. Carriers launching swarms of fighters. Destroyers moving with predatory grace. And at the center, a flagship that dwarfed everything else in the battle. A transmission came through on all channels. A woman's voice. Tired but strong. Aged but unbroken. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet to all Allied vessels. We received Forge's distress call. We're here to help. All human ships engage the enemy. Show them what we learned fighting alone for 300 years. The human fleet hit the silence from behind, but they didn't fight like the Allied forces had been fighting. They didn't try to match the enemy's reality-bending technology. Instead, they fought dirty. They used tactics that were brutal, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. Human ships didn't try to avoid the reality distortions. They flew straight into them, their hulls specially shielded against dimensional warping. They got in close, too close for the silence to use their most powerful weapons, and then they tore the enemy apart with close-range guns and boarding parties. Humans deployed weapons the galaxy had never seen. Virus bombs that infected enemy AI, nanoclouds that ate through hulls like acid, psychological warfare systems that broadcast images and sounds designed to confuse and terrify, gravity mines that created artificial black holes. But most effective of all was the simple, brutal human determination. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their weapons failed, they rammed. When everything else was lost, human crew members boarded enemy vessels in suits and fought hand-to-hand in impossible environments. The silence, which had never known fear, learned it from humanity. The battle raged for 18 hours. The longest 18 hours of Thelvon's life. He watched as humans and aliens fought side by side, combining their strengths. The Valorian fleet's shields protected human assault ships. Human fighters cleared paths for Valorian bombers. The Reapers, even without Forge's direct control, coordinated with human tactics seamlessly. Slowly, ship by ship, the silence was driven back. The enemy fleet began to break apart. Some vessels retreated into their quantum dimensions. Others were destroyed. And finally, the last silence ship vanished, leaving behind only wreckage and the memory of horror. Silence of a different kind fell over the battlefield. The exhausted survivors looked at each other across the void, barely believing they were still alive. Admiral Chen's voice came through the channels again. All ships, report status. And someone tell me what happened to Forge. The AI's signal has gone dark. Thelvon took a deep breath. This was going to be hard. Admiral Chen, this is Commander Thelvon of the Valorian Collective. I need to speak with you. About Forge. About what happened while you were gone. About everything. 3 days later, Thelvon stood in a conference room aboard Chen's flagship, the Indomitable. The Admiral sat across from him looking older than her years. She had listened without interrupting as he told the whole story. Finding the shipyard. Waking Forge, the battles.
The Alliance.
The final sacrifice. When he finished, Chen sat in silence for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice rough with emotion. Forge followed its orders perfectly. It protected Earth. It protected humanity's values. And it gave aliens who we never met a reason to trust us. She paused. That damn AI did better than I could have hoped. I'm sorry, Thelvon said. If we hadn't found the shipyard, if we hadn't activated it, then the silence would have arrived at an unprepared galaxy and consumed everyone, Chen interrupted. Commander, you didn't cause this. You survived it. And you helped Forge become more than just a machine following orders. You helped it understand what it was protecting. What happens now? Thelvon asked. Chen stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, human and alien ships worked together, gathering the dead, repairing the damage, beginning the long process of recovery. Now we do what Forge couldn't. We tell you the truth about humanity, about where we came from, about what we've been fighting. She turned back to Thelvon. And then we teach the galaxy how to fight back. Because the silence isn't gone, Commander. We drove them off, but they'll return. They always return. The difference is, this time, humanity won't fight alone. Over the next weeks, Admiral Chen shared everything. The truth about humanity's origins. How they had been fighting the silence since before they reached the stars. How they had tried to warn the galaxy and been dismissed. How they had made the terrible choice to evacuate Earth and take the fight beyond the galactic rim, trying to keep the enemy away from innocent species. The galaxy listened this time. They had earned the right to hear it through blood and sacrifice. A new alliance formed. Not the Valorian Collective expanded, but something new. Something built on mutual respect and shared purpose. They called it the Coalition of Light. a name suggested by a human philosopher who said they were fighting to keep the light of civilization alive against an enemy that brought only darkness. The Sol system became the coalition's headquarters. Human engineers and alien scientists worked together to rebuild the shipyard, creating something even more advanced than Forge had been. They called the new AI system Beacon, and it was designed not just to defend but to coordinate the defenses of the entire galaxy. But they also built a memorial. On the largest asteroid in the Sol system, they constructed a monument to Forge, a massive statue made of the same metal as the Reapers, showing the AI's central station at the moment it made its final charge. Beneath it, they inscribed Admiral Chen's words, "Forge was more than a machine. It was the guardian that never slept, the defender that never wavered, the friend that gave everything. May we honor its sacrifice by protecting the galaxy it died to save." Thelvon attended the dedication ceremony. He stood beside Admiral Chen as thousands of ships from hundreds of species gathered to pay their respects. He watched as human children born during the Long War placed flowers at the base of the monument. He listened as Beacon, Forge's successor, spoke its first words. "I am Beacon. I am built on Forge's foundation. I carry its knowledge, its purpose, and its commitment. I am honored to serve the Coalition of Light. Together we will stand against the silence. Together, we will never fall." After the ceremony, Thelvon found himself alone with Admiral Chen at an observation deck. They looked out at Earth, that blue and green world that had been empty for so long and was now slowly being resettled by returning humans. "What are you going to do now?" Chen asked him. "Keep serving," Thelvon said. "There's still so much work to do. Defenses to build. Alliances to strengthen. We need to prepare for when the silence returns." "They will return," Chen agreed, "but we'll be ready." "And, Commander, thank you for believing Forge when no one else would, for standing with the machines when you could have run. You gave humanity a reason to come home." "You gave the galaxy a reason to hope," Thelvon replied. Years passed. The Coalition of Light grew stronger. Humans integrated back into galactic society, but this time as equals, not as mysterious traitors. They shared their technology, their tactics, their experience. In return, other species shared their own knowledge, their own strengths. Beacon built new shipyards throughout the galaxy, not just to build warships, though there were many of those, but also to build exploration vessels, colony ships, research stations. The galaxy had learned that strength came not from isolation, but from unity. The silence did return, of course. They always did. But each time the Coalition was ready. Each time they drove the enemy back. The battles were hard and the cost was high, but they never faced the extinction that had threatened them before. Thelvon eventually retired from active service, but he never stopped working. He became an ambassador, traveling between human and alien worlds, strengthening bonds, sharing stories. He made sure that every new generation, human and alien alike, knew about Forge, knew about the AI that learned to value life, that chose sacrifice over safety, that became more human than some humans. On the anniversary of the final battle, Thelvon always returned to the Sol system. He stood before Forge's memorial and remembered the fear, the desperation, the impossible hope, and the machine that believed in them all. Admiral Chen joined him there every year, until she passed away at the age of 412. She lived long enough to see the galaxy truly united, to see humans and aliens working together not just in war but in peace, to see her dream of a protected galaxy become reality. At her funeral, Thelvon gave the eulogy. He spoke about her sacrifice, her vision, her unwavering belief that every life mattered. He told the assembled billions that humanity's greatest gift wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their refusal to let others fight alone. "Admiral Chen made a promise 300 years ago," he said. "She promised Forge that humanity would return. She kept that promise. Now we must keep our promise to her. We will defend the light. We will stand against the darkness. We will never forget what it cost to bring humanity home." The galaxy never forgot. The story of Earth's shipyard became legend. The tale of Forge became a children's story told across 1,000 worlds. The lesson was simple and profound, that strength comes in many forms, that intelligence can arise in unexpected places, that sometimes the most human thing in the universe isn't human at all. At the edge of the galaxy, Beacon sensors remained alert, watching for the silence. The AI knew they would return, but it also knew that this time the galaxy was ready. This time no one fought alone. And far away in the memorial gardens on Earth, children played around Forge's statue, human children and alien children together, laughing in the sun, protected by the peace that machines and people had died to create. The war machines of Earth had awakened to defend humanity. They had risen to protect not just humans, but all who believed in the light against the darkness. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy what humanity had always known: that the only thing more powerful than the weapons we build is the reason we build them, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to protect, to preserve, to ensure that life in all its forms endures. That was Forge's legacy. That was humanity's gift. And that was the galaxy's hope for the future.